If you stare into the abyss stares back. Why are humans so obsessed with death? Would we have such a short time to live? Is something on the other side?
In the heart of the Mediterranean lies an ancient land that has housed humans for as early as the 18th century BCE. Sardinia is steeped in mystery, tradition, and lore from many different civilizations that have populated the island. While parts of the island are part of the Blue Zone, today we delve into the unique perspective of death held by the Carthaginian and Nuragic people of Sardinia, exploring some of the most cherished establishments on the island, the necropolis and the Nuragic di Rumini. Carl Jung once wisely stated that the unconscious wants to be realized. It wants to see, it wants to be recognized, it wants to emerge. But what is down there? What wants to emerge that wants to be seen and recognized? What frees the unconscious from being submerged and achieving consciousness? Reality? Tenure? Could it be death? The Carthaginians thought this, as their burial practices of the time was unlike those of other civilizations. What we see here today in Sardinia is the old necropolis. Amongst some controversial practices, such as the Tophet, the Carthaginians practiced a combination of both cremation and inhumation for their dead. Due to the findings in the tombs we see here, it's suspected that the social status of a person determined if they were cremated or buried. The tombs we see here today range between 2 and 11 meters deep, dug to perfection with simple tools and bare hands. At the entrance of each tomb, an elaborate structure was built and ornately decorated. A thriving afterlife awaited those after the mortal life, and the Carthaginians believed that the ornate possessions left in the grave would better help the deceased person in their afterlife. Many were buried with their worldly possessions. Others were buried with excessive additions to these, and it's to question if the goods were left to help the deceased enter and pay their way into the afterworld, or if they were goods to bring out the unconscious desires of the dead. Would a middle-class man buried with piles of coins and pottery be able to establish himself in a high-class role in the afterlife? Could they embetter themselves after death? Did the deceased have wishes for what they wanted to be buried with? Unconscious wishes that could only be released after an eternal dream wasn't being suppressed by the conscious personality? Freud states it beautifully, as dreams are the royal road to the unconscious. What is your unconscious fantasy? What if the subconscious were to embody the conscious, and one was able to become a unification of two personalities, to erect itself into a superhuman? I'm certain that the existentialists would have something to say about that. But it brings us back to the necropolis, where we see here where Sid was buried. In the Carthaginian days, Sid was the superhuman, likely an imported god from the Egyptians. Sid was the god of healing. Next to him here was buried a very prominent people with graves that are ornately decorated in flowers, plants, and other symbols. While the porous limestone did make it easier to dig into the ground, the solace, serenity, and ghosts of the past lurk around here. If you close your eyes, maybe you can imagine people of the past walking around, having a tea in what used to be rolling hills on the outskirts of the city. Maybe you can hear the chants, the songs, the dances as the townspeople celebrated the passing forward of their friend into the next world. Maybe you hear bombs crashing in the background, as these tombs were also used as shelter during the brutal and unexpected World War II bombings from the Americans. War isn't uncommon to this island. The Mediterranean trading route has always been akin to battles of some sort. Around the 2nd century BC, the Romans rolled into the land and started to occupy it as the vastness of their empire continued to spread outward from the Italian peninsula. As they were occupying the lands, death was part of life for them. And similar to the Carthaginian people, the Romans practiced a combination of cremation and inhumation, with a similar practice of leaving elaborate gifts at a tomb site. Inhumation, though, was practiced less frequently over time due to the outbreak of disease that started to emerge from the necropolis area. And well, there's limited space here. So new ways to bury the dead had to be found, and fast, especially for the upper class. Now we stand north, at the base of the Sunuraxi di Barumini, and we encounter Hegel's idea that death is the most universal of all phenomena, because it confronts all individuals, and each one has a unique relationship with it. Where we stand today, the relationship that the Romans had with this place and the relationship that the Nuragic had with this place are two orthogonal yet tightly coupled directions. The Nuragic were the original settlers in Sardinia. Their presence dates back to the 18th century BCE. Part of their culture was to build large structures to guard the most priceless of belongings, fields and water. The entire structure that we stand on here today was built around this water well. Houses surrounding the giant tower in the middle housed three things: a place to sleep, a fire for cooking, and the most influential people had a place to practice their paganism. While not much is known about the Nuragic people, we do know that fire and water played a huge role in their religion. The area that we see here today held what we believe to be an altar in the middle part, surrounded by areas to sit where water would boil. Over time though, as the Romans moved in with their superior weapons and armor, the Nuragic people succumbed to the forces and were soon forgotten. These large structures were reconfigured to be stores for Roman weapons, and of course tombs for the most wealthy and notorious of the Romans. It's unique to think about what was once a structure to protect and worship the most sacred of resources, water and fire, were turned into a refuge for the dead and weapons. The irony in this is the juxtaposition that it has still today. Sigmund Freud's psychoanalysis suggests that our understanding of death is intertwined with our unconscious fears and desires. One is to question if the Nuragic people summoned their own fate. Structures built 5 meters thick, encased with layers of stone to protect them what they feared most, being captured, ultimately led to their death, both living and as a culture. After the Romans, the Vandals, and the Byzantines came in, each reusing the land in ways they so desired, the Italians were next, and then the Aragons, and then the Spanish, and then the Aragons, and then the Spanish, etc. And finally, the Italians, which is where we're at today. But what is next for this island that is so connected with culture, religion, and science behind such an obsessive topic, such as death? As we conclude our journey throughout the ancient culture of Sardinia, we are left with the words of Nietzsche to ponder the profound connection between life, death, and the eternal recurrence. What if some day or night a demon were to steal you into your loneliest loneliness and say to you, this life, as you live it and have lived it, you will have to live it once more and innumerable times more. History will repeat itself. That which we hold sacred today, protect and worship, the conscious, will one day embark on an eternal dream as the unconscious comes to power and gives birth to that which could not exist. The individualization process is a rediscovery of one's innate uniqueness, an expression of that which makes us who we are.